never die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Space. It's horrible. It looked like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.
The possibility of nuclear weapons is a natural outpouring of all we know foundationally about physics and subatomic particles.
Okay, I regret to inform you that the first 20 minutes of the stream have been completely silent, and I am sorry.
Oh my God, where did I stop? Where did that start at?
I did not check one box, and we had a silent stream to begin with. Okay, I am sorry.
Oh no,
It's fine. We're gonna roll with it. You know, this is, we should
Just
have
how it is.
we should have done a test stream to begin with. We did not, and that's my fault. I am sorry.
So the intro didn't get recorded.
Nothing got recorded. Well, it was recorded, but it was quiet, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We can.
Well, I mean, when we release it later,
Yeah, there was no audio.
no audio. Okay.
No audio. I mean, no, it didn't. It's because we're not recording now. We're streaming.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
it's fine. Hey, I'm sorry. First 20 minutes is silent. That is entirely my fault, and I apologize. So, quick recap. I'm sorry, dude. Oh my God, we're covering conspiracies today. Oh my Jesus. I'm covering the moon landing being faked. Paul is covering the Kennedy assassination, and Aeon is covering nuclear weapons testing conspiracies abound.
Yes. So
We will, we'll do a small recap next week just to cover what we missed the first 20 minutes of the show. I'm sorry, we're good now. We're good now.
okay. So essentially, people started looking at nuclear footage and saying, "Wow, the camera stays really still, but all the buildings blow up. This can't be real, right?" Discounts a whole lot of engineering on the part of folks that can create nuclear weapons that they can't. The cameras are situated in bunkers pretty far away, everywhere from 2,700 feet to 10,500 feet from the actual explosion. Lots of the close cameras did not survive. The ones that did survive are the ones that you see video of. They were in concrete and steel enclosures with 2.5-inch minimum thickness lead sheeting around the cameras, with multi-layered material glass, as well as shading for the glass and then the lenses themselves to prevent overexposure. A lot of the early tests, the only ones that actually took, the only video that actually took was a very far off video, which incidentally, Lawrence Livermore Labs has now released on YouTube, on their Lawrence Livermore Labs YouTube channel. There, if you go to playlists, there's a playlist that is nothing but hundreds of videos of nuclear weapons testing that's been declassified. Everything from knot hole test, upshot test, teapot test, all of those are on there. The atolls, the Castle Bravo tests, Castle Bravo, all the Castle tests, all that stuff is available, and it's all been refurbished by one of the lead nuclear weapons development technicians. This is what the guy's done in retirement. He convinced them to both declassify it and let him restore it and collect it and archive it, and then also release it to the public. So that stuff's available. But the video that they're referencing are all the ones that we might have seen in movies of, a side shot of a town. You're looking down at some buildings, they blow away, get sucked back, and then get blown back again from And then they'll also reference that the shockwave is weird. Why does it get blown back and then sucked back in and then blown back out again? The reason for the weird shockwave is you have the initial blast. There's a vacuum of 0 oxygen in the burn radius where it's actually converted molecules into other things. Creates a vacuum or immediately pulls it back, creates a compression effect from the force of the suck back and creates a second shockwave.
Yeah.
If you were to measure the air pressure, you'd actually see it go on like a kind of like a bass kick, boom, boom, and then a bunch of little tiny squiggles of it equalizing out. So
are you gonna touch on the cars?
So I was going to, but I could not find the video. The only video that I saw that might reference why one of the videos might be faked. I could not find where they reference it's a Buick or a Cadillac behind one of the buildings. There's an explosion. There's the explosion of the initial light, and then the vehicle disappears from the frame. Not like covered in dust, but like almost like it gets deleted. Like they forgot to put it on there when they did the test of the model. And, let's assume that's a real video. At the time, we were doing our very best to scare the crap out of the Russians. I do believe it was very hard to capture this sort of destruction on video in good lighting when you have the lighting extremes that you do. And I think if that section of it were faked, it would only be as a good demonstration of what would happen, or their best representation. Yeah, so those are the videos. But there's one of like it kind of looks like an old army barracks, and it's got the Buick behind it.
Okay, that one had a vehicle behind it, but it did disappear. Or did not disappear. Oh, there's the...
Yeah, so this is the one. And then supposedly, when it runs back, the car's not there. But some of the building's still there.
Okay, so it's
It's either that one or the one in the lower corner.
This isn't a great shot. I hate to do this, but let me see if I can find the TikTok.
Yeah, it was silent in the beginning, but the other half of the problem with this conspiracy, even should some of these have been models simply meant to scare the Russians, claiming this means that all nuclear weapons are fake and don't exist, is a big problem for the people of Japan, whom have all sorts of reasons. I don't even go down that rabbit hole. All the lasting effects of nuclear weapons being detonated in their country.
I'm sorry for the sentence.
On top of that, you have the Marshall Islands, who would also have strong disagreements about whether or not nuclear weapons exist. And you can look up the Castle Bravo test to understand all you need to know about why the Marshall Islands would disagree.
Okay, we don't have permission to play this, but I'm going to play it anyway. But this is the guy. This is the guy that talks about it.
Yeah.
I think this is the one we want. Split screen.
Okay, here's another conspiracy theory. You've seen all the grainy footage of nuclear test blasts that you've seen, the mushroom clouds, and there are always these grainy things, and there's all these like little houses lined up and little trees lined up, and it blows everything down. Yeah. Okay, so here's the question, right? So what happened? Okay, so this is great. Okay, you'll love this. So what happened to the camera? How is that happening yet the camera's like totally stable and fine?
Oh my god.
Yeah, but you saw that last one, the camera does move.
The radiation didn't cause any
You
damage.
saw that?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And by the way, okay, we'll do this one more time here. Let's see the car.
Here's the one.
Okay, there it is. There's the car right there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
it showed up.
so wait a minute. First of all,
wasn't there.
First of all,
Yeah, look, no car.
It's not there. Yeah.
No car.
the car
No
come
car.
from?
Before.
No car.
Boom,
This is-
car.
Car.
And then it's there. Yeah. Yeah.
Insane.
Is that a house or is that like
Yeah. So that's the number one thing they're pointing to. Now, I will say, if you look back in the clips, some of his clips change just as the camera's getting knocked around. like go back a little further. Yeah, just play it from there.
I'm just gonna mute it.
Yeah, so he says, what happens to the camera? So in here, it doesn't really move. Watch the next couple of clips. Right there. See how the camera
Yeah.
starts to move as
Yeah.
the shockwave hits it, and he transitions into another one.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay.
it's good it's
on.
good at editing. Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah. I'm like, just as the shockwave gets to the camera, you clip to another camera. So I get what he's doing there. I mean, that one clip of the car appearing and not being there and then appearing all of a sudden, just as the blast hits.
Mhm.
I get why that would raise suspicion, though. Like I said, who benefits from it? From making it more dramatic and having more dramatic shots. Well, obviously the U.S. because we're detonating.
We wanted to
but you
scare
gotta
the hell
take
out of people.
shot. Yeah, we wanted to scare everybody because I guess somehow, dropping it on Japan didn't scare the world enough. They all wanted to make them too.
Right.
Right. So all that we know, everything we know foundationally about physics that we run a huge amount of our world on, all clearly points to nuclear weapons being a natural outpouring of a cascading effect of, a runaway nuclear reaction. So I'm not going to listen to nuclear weapons are fake. Now, I do agree with Dude that shot is probably fake. That shot.
Yeah.
Where the car's not there and then it appears. I'm down with that. I will agree with you that they probably have faked some of the videos. Once we get to your thing, we're going to talk, all about government faking videos. I think they may also do it in the case of UFO misinformation. I think they may put out some shitty videos to be like, oh yeah, look, we found a UFO, so that people won't believe, in craft. Because what's better than to put out crappy UFO videos that look obviously fake with somebody claiming that it's real, right?
Yeah.
So, on to the better definition of a conspiracy, which is, not necessarily something that you can never find evidence for, but exists. It's a thing that's covered up or a thing that's done by a group of people secretly, or at least in a way that attention is diverted for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, still concerning nuclear weapons. So, in the 90s, we entered into an agreement with Russia that looked like a turning point in nuclear weapons disarmament. Right, we entered an agreement to disarm or dismantle, a certain number of weapons for us, a certain number of weapons for Russia, and that did happen. A whole lot of them. So I'm going to give you some numbers. So current active warheads, meaning assembled and could be detonated as they are, whether or not they're on a vehicle or not, for the U.S. is 3,708 warheads.
Yeah.
Everywhere from, a couple megatons to kiloton.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, kilotons to megatons. Anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Country destroyers to town destroyers. Deployed, meaning actively placed on a delivery vehicle or in an aircraft or, on a sub. 1,770 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Placed in 444 locations around the world.
Yeah.
On our part. Warheads awaiting dismantlement, meaning still assembled and could be made active quickly, but in long-term isolated storage. 1,336
Jesus.
warheads. Yeah. So now we're up to over 6,000 warheads that are still in a usable state.
Yeah.
Guess how many we've dismantled since 1994?
7.
12,000
What?
and 88 warheads we've dismantled, and we still have approaching 7,000
Yeah.
assembled. So Russia has not dismantled any,
Of course.
but they have 1,200 waiting dismantlement.
Waiting.
They have
Heavy air quotes.
waiting, yeah. They have 4,380 active, or in placement, and then they have the 1,200 set for dismantlement, but essentially still completely assembled.
Yeah.
Here is the conspiracy. So, what do you think happens when you dismantle a nuclear weapon?
You
What do you
take
think
it.
that means?
You take it apart every piece, or remove
And
the
then what?
remove the fissionable material.
And what do you do with that fissionable material?
If it were me, I would use it in something else, like a nuclear reactor.
Right, that's what you might think.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what or one might think, you destroy it, like what, if you're
Right,
dismantling it,
right.
like if you're disarming, you would get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
Grind it up, make it into new fuel rods,
Yeah.
something like that, because you can grind the stuff. I mean, as long as it's not, you don't have two cores next to each other, you can melt it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. Here is what happens: the delivery vehicle, casing, warhead, and in some cases even the rocket, are disassembled piece by piece, packaged up completely,
Mm-hmm.
not destroyed in any way, packaged up. The rockets essentially get put into a rocket spare part warehouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Engine, body, fuel system, etc. Like
Right.
spare parts. The warhead, the same thing is done with it, and the core is kept intact as it is and stored in underground facilities for safety. So, in effect, while we have dismantled 12,000 nuclear weapons, we still have 12,000 nuclear cores stored and waiting
Yeah.
somewhere.
Oh, well, we need
So-
10,000. So let's just put the pieces back together.
Right. Now, that would take a long time. I mean, to be
Right.
fair, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Right, to reassemble one. The other side of this is none of this was done in any verifiable way. Right?
Mhm.
12,000 nuclear war, because we're not going to let other people watch.
Yeah.
It's all proprietary technology. We just tell them that we have. And in truth, in nuclear technology, the only trust that's available between countries in nuclear technology is trust that if you launch one, we'll launch one too.
Yeah.
That's the only trust. So the fact that we said we got rid of them, I mean, sure, I believe they dismantled them, but they even say, if you go on the nuclear or the American Atomic Energy Commission information, they're like, yeah, they're then stored and kept just as they are. Like, they're very upfront about it. So the scary conspiracy is that dismantlement doesn't mean disarmament. It means dismantlement. It does not mean disarmament. If anything, we've made newer, bigger ones, and we're even more armed than we ever were,
Yeah.
not less. Including Russia, including everybody else, because everybody's participated a little bit. Canada, France, Germany, Britain. Everybody's participated a little bit, except for, say, China and North Korea, who are going in the other direction.
Yeah.
And making more. And some of these cores may have been recycled into more modern weaponry.
Mhm.
There may not be 12,000 of them sitting underground somewhere. Some of those may account for the 6,000 of them that are active.
Yeah, that would make
Or
sense.
Yeah, because
It's easy. It's
I mean,
already
but
in.
still,
It's already in the state you need it.
yeah, still, even if it did, that still means we have half again. We still have just as many active
As
we
inactive.
do inactive.
Yeah.
If every one of those cores got recycled into new weapons, which is, it's probably about half and half,
Mhm.
I would guess.
Yeah.
So that is my conspiracy. While everybody's worried about whether or not they're real, the truth is it's worse than that. They're real, and there's way more
Yeah.
than we like to act like we have, and they're being stored in mass rather than, we probably have enough nuclear warheads to run the country for just unimaginable
Yeah.
numbers of years entirely on nuclear energy if we were to turn that stuff into rods, because rods are nowhere near the enrichment level of weapons grade uranium and
Yeah.
plutonium and some of the other products. So that's the crazy conspiracy,
Yeah.
I think, where nuclear weapons are concerned, not whether or not they're real. I think debating whether or not they're real is just people exercising their lungs.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any fruitfulness in that. But that's what I got. That's what I got.
Okay. Well,
Fake conspiracy, real conspiracy.
fake conspiracy, fake real. You decide. You decide. Um, I did a little number crunching while you were talking. So it's probably more closer to the first 10 minutes of the show was quiet.
Okay,
because,
that's fine.
Because there was like 5 minutes of intro, the intro video, and then us bullshitting.
Okay.
So it could have been.
Well, we got it back up.
Yeah,
It's fine.
It's good. It's good. I'm just saying, we're okay.
We'll check next.
Next time, the box is checked now. So next time when we go live, it's gonna stay checked. So what it was is when I was streaming gaming, if you set it up a certain way, you could listen to copyright music while you're streaming, and so can your viewers.
Okay, I see.
And so I had it set
You
up
had to work.
to where the only thing that was really recording was specific channels. Well, everything else was muted except these specific channels. Well, we were on the muted channels. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
so yeah, we're full audio now, and we have 2 viewers. So
Oh, good.
there's that.
Hello, viewers.
Hello, viewers.
You'll get to listen to the intro music next week. It's really dope,
Yes,
I promise.
and we will.
Vic just made it himself and edited that whole intro video.
Yes, we will play it again towards the end of the stream. And also, if you need to take a bathroom break, we can run a quick ad break, and it'll give us a couple minutes to run to the bathroom and get back.
I could pee.
You good right now?
I could pee.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to pull this up on my laptop. I could also pee. I've had a couple beers and a couple sodas. All right, don't judge me.
Yeah, I'm on soda number 2.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Them fizzy waters run right through. me.
Mm-hmm. What are you having? I saw a hop water over there.
Yeah, we drained the hop water, and now I got a old Rambler grapefruit.
Oh.
Not sponsored by Rambler or Hop Water, but they are delicious nonetheless.
Give me like 30 seconds. I'm just gonna make a quick be right back screen because it won't let me run an ad.
Oh, well,
No. Just gonna find something to throw in there right quick. Yeah, that'll work. Save. Downloads. Yeah, this is something I didn't account for. Oop, hold on. I gotta switch studio mode. Yeah, there's lots of little things that have to be done before.
I believe it. That's why you're running it.
Yeah, it's a lot, man.
I
Lots,
don't envy you.
lots of little things. But fortunately, I had the experience. Okay, there's that. Let me make it gigantic. All right. Gonna switch us back to normal mode, and we will be right back. We're gonna take a quick bathroom break. And hold up, don't go anywhere. Our 2 viewers. Okay, we've returned. Our bladders are empty. Give me just a second and we will pull up this website for Mr. Paul. Ooh, weird. My crappy microphone swung down. Do 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 do. Beyond Shadows podcast. Oh, you know what? You know what I can do? Wait, no, I can't. .com/JFK Oswald. Magic route, huh?
Yeah. Oh, the magic bullet route. More fun with physics.
Not secure. Reload. Let me have it. JFK Oswald Magic Route .shtml. Okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to bookmark it and pull it up on my personal page. Do. Hello, wake up. There's a workaround for everything.
Isn't there?
Yes. So, what did you need me to pull up here, sir?
So, page down, just a little bit. There's a, all right there. So there's a bullet there in the middle.
Yes.
Can you click on that? Great. Now, here are some of the things in the Kennedy assassination. I guess I'm going next.
Okay.
That are weird, that make no sense to me at all. And they really shouldn't make sense to anyone who knows anything about how things work, physics, gunshots, gunshot wounds, bullets.
Also, to be fair, if you disagree with physics, I just cannot talk with you about facts. If you're like, no, but physics is a conspiracy too. Nah, I'm done. That's it. I don't
So
Yeah.
this is the magic bullet as discussed in the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission was a commission put together by the government to look into this assassination and try to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
The Warren Commission said, and this is the bullet that was recovered in the limousine, that supposedly
Wait, that's the literal bullet?
that's the literal bullet.
That's the condition it was in.
Yes, and this is the magic bullet that, according to the Warren report, caused 7 separate wounds in 2 people and broke dense bones, yet remained looking just like that.
You've got to be kidding.
Ain't no way.
That's
There's
what they've,
no.
that's what they've sold the American people, hook, line, and sinker.
I
And-
thought it
and
was like
I'm-
I thought it was
and-
bullet fragments. This
Nope.
is ridiculous.
Nope. See, this is the problem. and
Oh.
This is how conspiracies start.
This is
Yes.
it. This is
Yes.
This is it.
How.
So
Get your
back
waders on,
before-
because this shit is deep.
Right. Back before I went to law school, before I practiced law, before I went to seminary, I worked in a job as deputy medical investigator for the state of New Mexico.
Okay, cool. So we've
And one thing I know about is gunshot wounds and bullets.
okay.
And that bullet did not hit a bone.
No.
Or anything.
Really, or anything, skin or anything. So why don't you just back out of that one?
Okay.
I just wanted you to see that, because this is how conspiracies start. The government's like, oh, I swear this is what happened, wink wink, right? All right, go to the one immediately to the right of that. Go to the right of it. This is literally completely the thing right out of the Warren Commission report. Okay? The remarkable path of the pristine bullet, according to the Warren Commission report. Snarky remarks were not contained in the Warren Commission report. So
Just added that
this,
to the fact.
this bullet, there's a bullet hole in the shirt about 5 3/4 inches below the collar.
Yes.
It makes a magic turn, goes right up to the president's neck, about where the necktie knot would be, right here in this little notch,
Yeah.
just above your rib, just above your sternum. It goes out of there, flies into Governor Connolly in front, enters into the right armpit, exits just below the right nipple, goes into the right wrist, shatters that right wrist, and then it goes into his left thigh. That's one bullet. This is the magic bullet theory that takes right. I mean, this is weirder than UFOs or UAP, right?
Yeah.
That suddenly stop, take right turns. Perhaps this bullet was guided by aliens.
Perhaps it was.
Well, and that flat diagram doesn't even describe, like, that makes it look like it goes up, forward, right?
Right.
Forward and down. But it's up, it's down, and then it goes
Down, up, down,
and a 90
up
degree to
again,
right,
then down
up,
again.
and then down, and then this way, then the opposite direction out towards the wrist, and then from the wrist in, down, and forward to the leg. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a corkscrew.
Yeah.
So I suppose a bullet could hit something and be deflected and cause its trajectory to change, but this and then the pristine bullet, it's just too much. It's just too much. There was more than one shot. I think the government's finally said, listen, there were 3 or 4 shots. So now suddenly Oswald is a Superman.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I realize he had Marine training, but come on. I just don't think with this bolt-action rifle he could have done that much. Maybe he did.
I can do it in
I
Call of
just-
Duty.
Yeah, well,
You haven't seen me
You
with a
and
marksman
Rob.
rifle. I'm a crack shot, all right?
so these are the things that really start making you question everything the government's told us about this thing. And the trouble is, much of the information is, even on the recent releases, much of the information is still heavily redacted.
Yeah.
I always like the government releases a document and every
Black.
single thing on it's blacked out except it says the.
Yeah.
The word "the" is not blacked out.
or
in
vehicle.
one place. Yeah, vehicle. and you know that's all it says. And I'm being a little silly about that, but not too much.
No, it's
So we
true.
have-
It's absolutely true.
We have this. We have a lot of documents that have been released, but they just don't tell us much. Every time there's going to be a new release of stuff, we get a little bit more, just a little bit more.
Would you say that the Warren Commission is the beginning of the ethos of U.S. government, the concept of U.S. government cover-ups
Oh, absolutely.
in the public mind?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think it is.
Well, in the public mind.
That's what I mean. In the
Oh,
not,
sure,
not the
sure.
start of them
Yeah.
doing any
Right.
sort of cover, but I mean the start of like the American people being like, "Oh,
Right.
the U.S. government doesn't always tell the truth."
Right.
Some people
Okay,
will
I-
say that,
I-
like, the
that's
Roswell
something.
incident was a cover-up, but that stuff didn't really come to light until 20, 30 years later when people started putting things
Right.
together.
Right.
Which, incidentally, is in the 60s when this sort of began to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So this happens in the early 60s. And, think of the backdrop of what was going on in America.
Cold
I mean,
War.
it's really just something. We're having a huge issues over civil rights in the country at the time.
hmm
And there's a lot of trouble going on. People are suspicious of the government, and then we have this assassination that happens, and then we have just what I think is frank dishonesty.
The Cold War is more like a low simmer,
Yeah, the
rather
Cold-
than cold,
right?
not so cold.
The Cold War's not so cold. It's a low simmer. So you have this, and this really troubles me, right? This really troubles me. And it begins to make me ask all kinds of questions. And then it begins to make me ask, what are the main things? So let me just say what the main conspiracies are. Hold on, I had them all pulled up here a minute.
Aha.
Cubans did it.
the
The Cuban government did it.
people that invented the sandwich.
Yeah, the people that invented the sandwich. There's the so-called New Orleans conspiracy, which was heavily covered in that whatever that fake documentary was. It was a mainstream movie. I've forgotten. Just lost my mind for a minute. Sorry about that. So there's this supposed, New Orleans connection. The CIA did it. There's a whole shadow government that did it. I guess that was the way to say deep state in those
Oh
days.
yeah.
Military industrial complex did it. The Secret Service did it. Cuban exiles did it. The organized crime did it. Lyndon B. Johnson did it. George H.W. Bush, who was running the CIA or would soon be running the CIA, did it.
George H.
H.W. The Soviets did it. Then there are other conspiracies. There's a whole decoy hearse. There's the whole wound changing. The wound apparently looks different in Maryland when the body is examined there than when it left Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
The Federal Reserve, the Israeli government, and there's a bunch of other published theories. And when I think you don't publish real information,
Big
Wait, the
Bird.
Federal Reserve.
Big Bird did it.
There's one around the Federal Reserve
My
too.
my dog.
Holy,
I always call it the Bilderberg and all that other
the
crazy
the Build-A-Bear group.
there's the Build-A-Bear group. There's always
That's
some
what I
money
call it.
behind these conspiracies, right? I'm being a little silly about that. I
I
don't
love the
believe it.
Bilderberg conspiracy.
Yeah.
Let's
That's what I call
talk
it.
about, as a lawyer, I like to talk about responsibility and fault. I spend all day talking about that and trying to figure out how to minimize it, how to avoid it, how to deal with it. And let me see what else is on that page. I'd imagine there's an example that I can use from that page that you've got pulled up. No, I don't. So think back to that day. No, I don't think any of us here talking on this podcast
No, I
were
wasn't.
alive that day. I certainly was not. My parents weren't even out of high school, I don't guess. Maybe not even in it yet.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
Funny. So the thing about look at that picture right there. That's the Life magazine published around the time the Warren Commission thing. And
This is a Zapruder film.
yeah, that's out of the
slide to
Zapruder.
the
Yeah,
Zapruder film?
those are slides
Yeah.
out of the Zapruder film.
So let's just look at this
So-
right quick. So here's him. Here's
Right.
Is this the what was it? The governor you
That's
said?
the governor. That's Governor Connolly, right? The governor of Texas.
So it entered his back here, came out,
Yeah.
went up, came out,
Right.
kind of went up and hit
Hard
him
for
high.
me to-
It's just
it's hard for me to follow the whole magic bullet theory, and that's not what the Warren Commission called it. They didn't call it the magic bullet theory, but it's hard for me to kind of follow their thinking, right?
yeah.
Much like it'd be hard for me to follow that bullet, it's hard for any of us to follow it because that's just not really the way ballistics behave.
hmm
Just not the way the physics of it work. And I don't understand what the story is, or were they incompetent or were they dishonest? Or was it a mix of the two?
Yeah.
And I just don't know that. But let's talk about the Secret Service for a moment. The last,
Were they trying to keep the American public from freaking out when they figured out that 3 different people all organized to shoot at the president at the same time?
right? And did they learn that it really was the Soviets or the Cubans or something else? And they're like, listen,
We can't give them credit.
we can't have this. We can't because we're going to be in an atomic. We can't have this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the thing is. So let's talk about previous assassination attempts. The last assassination attempt that was real, that the Secret Service got into a gun battle with someone prior to this, was in November 1st of 1950. And it was an attempt against Harry Truman's life.
Right.
The White House was getting remodeled. Harry Truman was overstaying in the Blair House. He was taking a nap in the afternoon upstairs, and 2 or 3 people who were Puerto Rican pro-independent activists came up and started a gun battle. And they killed what was called a White House or Capitol police officer. And they killed one of the people outright, and the other was severely injured, the attackers. But basically, the uniformed part of the Secret Service returned fire, and that Truman wasn't touched. I think the bullets, I think the sound of gunfire woke him up.
Right.
he wasn't injured. So here we are, about 11, 12 years later, just over 12 years later. And that was the last thing. And immediately before that, the last big thing was
FDR.
Yeah, someone tried to shoot FDR, or at least they thought so, prior to his first inauguration back in 1933.
And he delivered a speech with a bullet wound.
Yeah, and so they just didn't have a lot of real recent, decades experience.
Yeah.
But if you go and you look up assassinations of U.S. presidents, assassination attempts, it's alarmingly more common and happens more often than when you start reading all the stuff.
Yeah.
This is just the stuff they
Garfield
know.
got shot at on a subway.
Yeah. Hoover,
And
Taft.
let's not mention all the vampires that tried to kill Lincoln.
Right.
Because he was a vampire
That's how he
hunter.
learned to use an axe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
he
how he
was.
learned to use an axe.
Right, I saw that on TV, so I know it must be real.
Yes, it's absolutely real.
At least as valid.
Let's go back to the Secret Service. So the point is, the Secret Service, they have him riding in an open car. And there had been threats against his life that they had heard about prior to this Dallas trip. And here they have him riding in this open car. That just seems kind of crazy to me.
And they had a bulletproof bubble available.
Yeah, there was a bulletproof bubble
Yeah, they
available, and
chose not to.
didn't put it on. And part of it, I think, is because Kennedy didn't want it.
Yeah.
But I think there comes a point that, the Secret Service has to provide this bubble of protection.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this was frank incompetence by our then Secret Service.
Yeah.
And that's probably among my law and order conservative friends. It's a very unpopular thing to say.
Right.
To say somehow the Secret Service, the government, the police failed, but this is just an abject failure. It killed him and darn near killed Connolly.
Yeah.
And it was just shocking. So I think that was, that was wildly ridiculous. I think, to let him out there like that, especially in light of threats and in light of all the trouble. And he was really not in super friendly territory.
No.
Texas at the time, it was at least there was a pretty Republican stronghold. And he was certainly not a Republican. Now, just because someone's a Democrat and not a Republican, or the other way around, doesn't mean that the other party's gonna, try to off them.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, it's just really a concerning thing. You have
Although
all
it
kinds
seems
of
to
nuts
lately.
in the world.
It seems to mean that lately.
Well, sure. and let's talk about the latest thing against President Trump while he was at that thing. That's another abject failure of the Secret Service.
Absolutely.
You have somebody that can climb up on top of a roof, whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump. We cannot permit the hand of an assassin
Absolutely
to
not.
substitute their judgment for that of the majority of the American people. It's absolutely crazy. And the Secret Service, I think, just completely failed.
Yeah.
Completely failed. It was the local police that were supposed to be doing it. And the local police, like, we tried to tell the Secret Service, and everyone's pointing fingers. But the truth is, Secret Service is tasked with the protection of the president.
That's their
And
job.
They failed John Kennedy.
Yeah, it's
and they
their
failed
job.
Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Failed
even if there's tons of police, it's their responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. Their responsibility.
Bad track record.
And when we see this, when we see the president riding around, I mean, you wouldn't think of the president riding around in a convertible car today any more than
No.
I mean, it just wouldn't happen. It
would
wouldn't
not
happen in
happen.
part because of this. So that's super crazy. And interesting things to know. Of course, they took him over to Parkland, which was probably if it wasn't the closest hospital, it was the absolute fastest big hospital they could get to.
Yeah.
And if you were to drive from Dealey Plaza just by regular driving, according to the Google Lady Drive map, just regular driving, about 8 minutes. And they got there in about 3.5 or 4 minutes,
Sure.
because they apparently sped like a demon down the Simmons Freeway over to the World Trade Mart and got off there and went over to Parkland. And if you're familiar with Dallas, it's really not super bad. And they said the
I think it's
limousine and the accompanying police were going about 80 miles an hour.
I think it's a map. Let me see.
There's also another.
Yeah, that's it. If you can, yeah. So
Yep.
Oh, this is Oswald's. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
yeah.
Oswald.
That's what Oswald
But
did.
it might be the whole map, actually. It might be sort of the map of everything.
So about that magic bullet,
Yeah.
too. Something that I noticed you didn't mention is one of the most chilling parts of the Zapruder film.
Tell me.
It's so he does pitch forward,
Right.
except then he immediately pitches back with pretty extreme force, and what appears to be a part of his skull goes tumbling off the back of the convertible,
Right.
and his wife tries to
Grab it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. She's trying to get onto the back of the convertible.
Because she
In fact,
said-
she told Agent Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent that was running behind the limousine that jumped up on the back and got her in the back seat and then laid on top of both of them. She was telling him, "I've got his brains. I've got his brains."
Okay.
If you look at that magic bullet going into his arm and out of the front of his neck, I don't know how any of that accounts for
His brain coming
the
out.
dismantling of his brain
Yep.
case.
The brain, I know something about anatomy, and I know all those places where those holes are. There's no brain.
Yeah.
Involved. Yeah, not
Yeah.
not there.
I'm no professional,
And-
but mine is in my right elbow. So,
So it's still
Yeah.
far away, far away. And the interesting thing I think about this is, I guess there's when you're starting to think about these things, the trouble is we don't have real legitimate information from the government's Warren Commission. So, is there one bullet or more than one bullet based on what we know and based on what we all saw with our eyes in the Zapruder film? One bullet or more? And
More, for
yeah,
sure.
more for sure, but let's talk about it this way. So, the bullet hole from the tie knot, the only way for that to eject part of his skull would be if somebody were laying down lower than him, shooting at an upward trajectory.
So, I should mention
Yeah.
that part of Dealey Plaza is the way the car was. The limo was going at an incline just a little,
Uh-huh.
and there's a big storm drain that you could stand up in
With a
and-
big opening.
with the big opening.
Oh.
And so you could shoot up, and you could shoot back down. Have you seen? Think about the Zapruder film. You see him there, and he's waving, and he turns to his wife, and then he has like a weird look, and he goes like this. Have you seen? Just think of that. Have you seen
Let's-
it where both his hands come up like this?
Let me see if I can find the Zapruder film.
While you're looking for the Zapruder film, let me tell you some other troubling thing. Because there's not enough troubling things about. And this is how conspiracies happen, right? They just don't tell you the information, so people fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
There is a person who was filming on the other side of the street.
The babushka lady?
No, near the babushka lady.
Oh, okay.
There was somebody else filming, and a police officer came up and said, "I'll need that film," took the film, and no one's ever seen it.
Hmm.
Right.
So there's another film for this that someone somewhere has, presumably the government, and that this guy was filming, and then they got it. And maybe that's why I understand the Secret Service was pretty forceful with Zapruder, trying to get the film
Oh, yeah.
away from him. Pretty forceful with him, and he just wouldn't. He's like, "Here, I'll go develop it with you, but this is mine."
Yeah, absolutely. He knew his rights, and I think it rattled him a little bit.
Probably the only reason that film became available.
Probably.
Yeah.
And or maybe there was another film and it just disappeared somewhere, and everyone knew it, so the Secret Service is like, this one cannot disappear. We've got to see this and understand what happened,
Yeah,
because clearly they were asleep when it happened.
if
so
I
they wanted
rem-
to watch.
if I remember correctly, the second set of film, the one that disappeared, was taken. It was taken to a hotel room where they were planning on interrogating Oswald, but they never got him. and it was put in an envelope and handed off to somebody that nobody ever saw, and that's when it disappeared.
Yeah. So there's two different stories. One is somebody got it right out there on Dealey Plaza that was purporting to be a police officer,
Mhm.
and it just disappeared.
Yeah.
The other one is it made it up to some nondescript hotel room in which they were planning to interrogate Oswald. That sounds a little crazy to me because there were plenty of government buildings around for them to take him that would have been more secure than a hotel room and interrogate him. So I don't know if I believe the hotel room story. Someone somewhere at some time got at least the second film. The other thing that's always troubled me is there's the babushka lady, there's the man with the badge, there's the dark-skinned man, there is the umbrella man, and there's the person that had a seizure. So before the motorcade went through there, some person supposedly had a seizure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wondered what that was. Was it just somebody who had some seizure because they were epileptic, or they had a stroke, or they had a heart attack and they were dying, or what was the story?
This one's new to me. I've
ambulance-
never heard of the seizure.
Yeah, the ambulance came and got that person and took them away. And was it somebody trying to see how fast, the ambulance could
Response
get
time.
there? Was it somebody trying to divert attention so that somebody else could get some equipment in place? What was the story for that? Because, seizures are pretty shocking looking when you see them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they could be faked.
Sure.
And you could, the whole drama of the ambulance coming and all this stuff
Makes a lot of people look.
might make a lot of people look and not see something else, which they're getting some kind of equipment in place, and whoever they are. So it's always made me wonder. Then you have this umbrella man. Was that umbrella being used to send a signal?
Yeah.
Or was it just somebody sun to see their skin? I mean, what was it? Was it if the umbrella's open, this is a go? Or if the umbrella's closed, this is a go? Was it some kind of signaling to those involved? What was it?
Mm-hmm.
The trouble with my umbrella man story right there, though, is if there were people in the storm drain, one or two people in the storm drain to shoot, then
Yeah, it seems
they could umbrella man standing behind them.
seems like if I were to plan something like this, not saying I will, I am not planning.
Right?
I'm not planning.
Good to know.
Hypothetical.
Right.
I
I wouldn't really know how to plan this, but boy, I don't think I'd be as dumb as some of this.
there would be like
things mud.
quadruple redundancies, 5-6 shooters
Right.
in place, fail safes.
Right.
We're gonna make sure this gets done right the first time, which explains
'Cause you
multiple
won't get a
shots to
second
me. Maybe it was
right.
multiple shots were fired because he's not firing. He should have fired by now. Pa. And maybe the other two were just had their finger on the trigger and halfway pulled, while they did a little jump when they heard the first shot. Pop, 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 pop. There's multiple shots fired now. Or it could go so many different ways, man.
It's easier to explain the angles and the injuries with multiple shots
Yes.
than, Occam's razor doesn't fit everywhere, but when you're talking about bullets and bullet injuries,
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy to explain that with multiple shots.
Right.
It's very hard to explain it with an ungrazed single bullet.
That movie Shooter comes to mind. You know what I'm talking about? The Bobbly Swagger movie?
No.
With Mark.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yes.
Marky Mark.
They tried to frame him for shooting the president, and what they did was they recovered rounds from his personal shooting range.
Oh, yeah.
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 And, that's, what's the best way to match ballistically to a gun with a perfectly preserved, bullet, man. So it's just,
Bullet, right.
without that perfectly preserved bullet, I don't think there would have been any connection. For all we know, maybe Oswald was up there and he was planning on doing it, but he chickened out.
Right.
I don't know what to think about Oswald.
The long
he
shot
seemed
to Bing.
kind of a nut. I mean, he wasn't entirely stupid. He wasn't an imbecile.
Mm-hmm.
But he's hardly the the person you might think of an international assassin,
Yeah.
right?
They always said he was kind
He
of
just-
dumb.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And boy, I guess there is such a thing as dumb luck, or blind squirrels can find a nut sometimes, or
Right.
something. But I just, if I were some other superpower that was trying to orchestrate this, I'm not sure I would have picked him.
Not be him.
Yeah.
I might have framed him.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
going to
that's,
say.
and that's in fact exactly what he said. He
He-
said, "I'm a
I'm a
I didn't do
patsy.
this."
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
exactly what he said. That's the modern. That was the way to say, as we modern say, "I was framed." This
Yeah.
is a setup,
Mhm.
and that's what he said. And unfortunately, he was killed before we could have a public trial.
Mhm.
This is one of the reasons why we have public trials in this country, is to avoid this kind of suspicion. But
Mhm.
we've never been able to have a public trial about any of this at all.
Yeah.
Nothing. I guess there was probably some grand juries convened in New Orleans, but other than that, we haven't
So
had a public trial about this because Oswald was killed.
you
And,
want
and I think it would have been interesting to see this in the crucible of an American courtroom with real, with real lawyers on all sides trying to say he did or he didn't.
before I go any
You
further?
found the Zapruder.
I did, and I'm going to say this puppy never does this. So this is actually really nice. He's very young. He's like 6 months old.
Yeah.
He never does this. Not even when we're sitting in bed. So I'm really enjoying this. Anyway, yeah, we got the Zapruder film. You want to see us?
Yep.
All right. There's no sound. I got it muted. So
Okay. So the first shot apparently happened. See his arms up like that? Do you see that?
yeah.
Go back for just a minute. As soon as because that's the Stemmons Freeway sign. And there he is with his arms up like this. So you might think he's like, "Oh, I've been shot here." Nope, this is a neurological sign. He's injured. This is basically a reflexive. That's a reflexive sign. I've forgotten what it's called, but
Right.
that's a reflexive sign from a neurological injury, a major neurological injury. And he probably that's a bullet through the neck, through the spinal cord.
Okay.
And then you're gonna see the headshot.
Oh yeah. Trigger warning, people. We're about to see somebody die. So
But anyone in America has probably seen this.
Yeah,
40
this is-
times. Enough is in there ourselves.
I'm just gonna say, if you're watching, just go ahead, skip forward a little bit. And yeah, here we go.
Yeah, avert your eyes right now.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
wow, the spray.
Very obvious. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like,
And
but
so-
but
so
the
you
Warren
see-
Commission only cites a neck wound, but
Right.
there's obvious the front of his forehead. Like,
See,
Dude.
see, Jackie's already looking at him.
Oh
She's like,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
And-
Holy
shocking.
what?
have
Yeah.
you not? Hadn't you seen the Zapruder film?
I
before?
have,
So
but
that section of it used to be missing.
yeah.
When they originally released the Zapruder film, there was 5 seconds that they clipped out, and that was the 5 seconds. The bullet spray. That part
Oh
was missing.
man.
They added that later, after they cleaned up the coloring and everything.
And I'm going to tell you a terrible
Wild.
Oh
story.
look, you could see his head on the trunk right
Right
there.
there, and she's crawling back there. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, poor Mrs. Kennedy. She's so scared. She's trying to get out of there." No,
No.
she's not. She did everything in the world to protect him all the time, and she was back there trying to get his part of the skull in the brain. And there's Agent Clint Hill jumping up there.
Wow.
So likelihood is the one through the neck was from a long way off. That is the one that people would claim was up
And-
from the grate.
And notice how the spray's going
Up.
back
yeah.
like this. So the Texas Book Depository at this point is back way over his right shoulder. And so I just don't believe it was one bullet. I think he's been shot.
That's a front
Right there,
impact,
he's
too.
shot. Right there, he's leaned forward and his arms are up like this.
Yeah.
Then he gets and the head thing happens.
Oh, there's the spray. Yeah. So the spray is going that way, which means the trajectory is coming from behind.
you think?
Yeah.
It looks like impact to me from the front.
Yeah, it looks like impact from the front.
But the only thing that would cause high impact spray like that would be like a 50 cal from a half a mile away.
But listen, is it that magic bullet we looked at a few minutes ago?
Maybe that's a big bullet. I'll say that, but it's a big bullet,
That's a
sure.
big bullet.
Or it's one that's, a jacketed hollow point. It'll imitate a large bullet.
So I
What's
think he's
gonna
I
do-
think
Whoa.
he's been shot already, right?
Was
there.
that a second puff? A first puff right there?
Yeah. Listen, you see him. You see him in this if you look real carefully. He emerges from behind that sign, right?
Yeah, like I saw it for just a split
Right.
second. Now I can't see it.
Right.
That it might have been a blemish in the film. Oh my gosh. That is just
Yeah,
nuts.
it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that to me looks like an entrance from the front. Looks like an entrance from the front to me.
Especially since he's the force of it propels him backwards.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see which way he leans.
All right, he's leaning forward right now.
Oh,
She's looking at him.
yeah, that's a forward shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it throws him back against the seat. Wild, right?
Yeah.
See, this is why there's so many problems, and all the ejection goes to all the stuff out of the back goes to the trunk.
And if you look, you could see her, I guess. Oh, geez, there's the shot.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, she's looking at him trying to see what's the matter with him because he's doing this. And I'd imagine he made a noise, right? Because
Oh, sure.
I think that's a through and through shot. He had a hole here.
Yeah. He was probably
And
gurgling or something.
yeah, it takes about 8 minutes of regular driving. I actually drove it myself last year. Takes about 8 minutes of regular driving.
And look,
The motorcade was in Parkland in about 3.5 minutes.
she actually.
Yeah.
So this gives me thought. So this is after the spray. Her hand is up, which means there was another shot, and she's trying to catch something airborne.
Right.
3 shots?
I think 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I'm not sure all 4 hit him.
I think he was dead by the time he comes out the other side of the sign. I think he got a spinal cord
When he
injury
does
from the.
this,
Yeah.
this is probably a fatal injury.
Yeah.
And when she's like looking over at him before the head spray, that's probably a fatal injury. But unfortunately, the United States government violated Texas law and took the body, so he was not able to be examined
Mm-hmm.
and autopsied in Texas. Was taken to the military hospital
Right.
and was examined there. But supposedly the body looked quite a lot different, and the injuries were very different there than they were in Texas. Of course, I've read the autopsy report from the exam from the Dallas County coroner, and it for Oswald, and it leaves quite a lot to be desired.
It does. Yes, I agree.
You can't really tell what the injuries were. I mean, there's some they opine the bullet that he was shot with injured probably his aorta, one of the great vessels, and probably the inferior vena cava, where the blood returns to the heart.
Yeah. So I've seen this film, but I've seen the edited one. This is my first time
Right.
seeing that. Like, I've never seen the spray before. And
Right.
that
Yeah.
just
And
blew my mind.
There was something
straightforward.
undertaken, a survey undertaken, I think in 2013 by ABC or CBS or something, which was, do you think Oswald acted alone? And 73% of Americans surveyed said no. So, and we've all gotten to see this film, and the Warren Commission's report just doesn't work.
Mhm.
right? This single bullet that did all this stuff doesn't work. And it's funny, I've never watched this film ignoring the Kennedys in the back seat and trying to look at Governor Connolly in the front seat.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never watched the film, even now, thinking about that. And I don't, I might go look at it at some point because I think that's interesting. But that's exactly how these conspiracies are born. It's just crazy, right? When you had people there who saw what happened, and then this Warren Commission comes out, it's like the ultimate government gaslighting. No, that's not what happened. That's not what you saw. You were just upset, blah, blah, blah.
So it does make you wonder if it was who was to take over as president if he was to be assassinated.
Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson.
So it makes you wonder if it was Johnson.
Well, there's a whole group of people that think it was Johnson that orchestrated it.
Because it sure seems awfully funny that this Warren Commission comes out and it's saying, no, this is what happened.
Right.
Dude's acting president. No, I wanted to say this.
Well, and here's, like I was saying before about the distinction between, a wild thing people want to be true to explain something inconvenient in their life, or why they're not getting the thing that they want, or why, or whatever, versus an overwhelming amount of evidence and facts that point one direction, and the group controlling the information saying, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah.
Right? The overwhelming amount of facts, hard evidence, video, physics, and so on, and then them being like, no, that's not what happened. As opposed to what people are calling conspiracies now, where there's just no evidence for the thing that you're saying, except they're saying, yeah, well, there's no evidence because it's a conspiracy. There's a major difference.
Yeah, it's there's a lot here that I had never heard of before, and after seeing this, especially the hands coming up,
and I think first hit
obviously
there you see it.
He's been
he comes out from behind that sign.
Yeah, he's been shot at this point. That's why.
Yeah,
that's why
Once.
Jackie's
Once.
looking at him, because he probably did if my wife started making those sounds, I'm going to look over and see what's going on. It doesn't matter if I'm in a dead sleep. I'm going to hear it and I'm going to react. He's definitely shot by this point.
Right. What if there were no shots from behind? They were all from the front.
Right.
Yeah. Because he's leaning back in his seat by this point.
Yeah. I think he's moving around, right?
Yeah, and then he starts to slump forward.
So
He's starting to slump forward.
She's sitting up.
She's sitting up and turning to look at him and like, what's going on?
So I've actually sat in this car. One of my very favorite museums. For those that don't know, I grew up in Detroit, or just outside of Detroit, and one of the best museums you could ever go to is called the Henry Ford Museum. They have, I will preach to the day I die how incredible the Henry Ford is. He did amazing philanthropic work. He's got so much stuff inside this museum. He's got a whole section of presidential assassinations, and one of the things he has is this car. And I may or may not have jumped the velvet rope and opened the back door and sat down.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I saw this car at the Smithsonian. It was on loan for the assassinations.
Anniversary.
No, they were having an assassinations exhibit.
Okay.
I saw the jacket. I saw the jacket that Lincoln was wearing, and all kinds of stuff related to presidential assassinations. And this car was on loan.
Because Americans aren't macabre at all.
No.
Yeah, we don't.
Let me plug the Henry Ford Museum one more time. They have Abraham Lincoln's last breath in a jar.
His last what? Breath.
His last breath.
Last.
Yep. In a jar.
And the chair he was sitting in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because we're not weird.
No. Henry Ford Museum, people. Go check it out. Seriously,
That's
though.
pretty amazing.
If you're ever up there near Detroit,
So-
you've got to go to the Henry Ford. You could spend 3-4 days walking around. It's an absolutely massive. When I say it's massive, it has full-size antique steam locomotives inside.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's got one of
Full
the
size, still assembled.
it's got one of the electrical generators from Henry Ford's first automotive assembly plant, and it is 3 stories tall. Still functions. Yeah. It's you walk in and it's just this big wheel turning, and it is wild. You should go. Absolutely should go. It's made for kids, but there's so much stuff there. Oh my god. They got the bus with Rosa Parks. That bus, the whole bus is in there. And it's like Henry Ford was very explicit about, major historical events happen, get everything. I want it inside this building. And that's what they do. They're just, they're very detail oriented. Incredible collection of things. Absolutely incredible.
Don't they have the car James Dean died in too?
Yeah.
His Porsche Spider.
Yes. And they have
I think
Edison's
they have it.
Edison's first light bulb, and it's still burning.
Really?
Yes.
It was apparently one of those lifetime bulbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to change that.
A
real quick 'cause
legitimate
they realized
lifetime,
it was
yeah.
valuable more.
Yeah, you can only sell it once at that point.
Right.
But yeah, his
Had
car
to make some changes.
Yeah, this car is there though. It's really kind of daunting. But that museum is where I fell in love with the Lincolns. This car that he's riding in is my number 1 on my bucket list. This is my dream car. I don't want a convertible, but the hardtop would be sweet. Yeah,
Hardtops are sweet.
yeah. Think of the. It was
in-
the car from the opening of The Matrix when they pick Neo up and they take the thing out of his belly button. That's the car.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one.
Yep. Yeah. Black on black.
That's right. Only way
So,
to only
I
way to
was
have a
in-
Lincoln.
I was in Dallas. Yeah. I was in Dallas in January of 2023. My brother had a medical emergency while we were flying through there. He was at Baylor, not at Parkland, but I had gone out by the time I'd been there a few days, a bunch of the family arrived to help. And so I had my mom and my aunt in the car. So for all the people that are my aunt in the world, that they're like, how long does it take to get to Parkland? So we drove over there. And then my aunt says, well, I won't use the exact words she said, but she says, boy, poor John Kennedy. Do you think if they'd taken him to a better hospital that he would have made it? And when you look at the Zapruder film, the answer is no.
Absolutely not.
He
No.
could have been on the operating room table and he would not have made it. He was immediately attended by 2 surgeons, a bunch of trained and experienced nurses, and more doctors poured into the room by the second.
Yeah.
And then, the Surgeon General, I think, was there. His private physician was there. Nothing would have helped him.
Yeah.
And by looking at this Zapruder film, it becomes quite apparent as to why.
Yeah. This man was.
Think of America in the days. We had complete segregation, and my aunt was of the opinion
He's dead.
that-
He's dead right there. He's dead.
yeah. My aunt was of the opinion that Parkland was I'm going to say it. She thought it was a colored hospital because there was such a thing in the South in those days.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever know that. That was not the word she used, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And I just told. She says, I'm just so glad he never woke up to know he was there. And then told me, do you think it would have made a difference? And this is my elderly aunt. And I said, no, ma'am, I don't think it would have made any difference at all. Because I knew, I'd seen this film and I knew that was not a survivable. That's a fatal injury.
Oh, yeah.
It's not we'll see if it's going to do it. That's just not survivable. Extruded brain matter's not survivable.
Nope.
So
Even now.
yeah, even today, it's
Wait,
just not
even
it's just
now.
not fixable at all.
I do know a guy from back when Aeon and I lived together. Shot himself in the forehead so the cops wouldn't get him. And he survived. And he's got a divot
Well, and there's
right here.
Right.
there's a
Because I think that he had been in one of our fine institutions here in Arkansas and got out. And while he was out, and they were closing in on him.
Yeah.
there was
Is that the story?
Yeah. That was it.
Had been my
Really?
there's a pretty famous account of a
really.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a pretty famous account of a guy that worked on the railroads doing the tamping
Yeah,
for the
rod,
explosives
yeah.
and took the rod
through
here,
Like through and through.
here to here and survived. But he was
Wow.
they said it was like he was a completely different person.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he survived. Yeah, took a steel rod here to here.
Yeah, sometimes people live in spite of all you can do to them, but that's not survival.
No. That was multiple shots. Absolutely. Oh, jeez.
So when you have the Warren Commission saying that it's one single bullet, and they show you the bullet, and it's published in Life magazine, it's published in the Warren Report, but you have even several hundred people there watching, and they saw this, and they heard the shots.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I heard more than one shot. And they're like, oh, no, it was cars backfiring. I mean, they just told them all sorts of things, right? So even if you didn't have this film, but you have several hundred people that were there watching, or even 100, that's 100 people who are just traumatized and are going to go tell the story over and over and over again. And within an hour, 1,000 people know. And within the next day, it's 10,000 people know. And everyone's repeating what everyone has heard and said. And then you have the Warren Commission report that comes out, and it's nothing like what the first 100 or so said.
Yeah.
It's nothing like changes in the telephone game that goes on that gets changed and embellished or whatever. Nothing. And this is how conspiracy theories start. This is how this whole conspiracy starts. It's the Cubans, it's the Soviets, it's a bunch of stuff. I don't think the Lyndon Johnson thing makes any sense to me. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think if you want to blame someone inside the United States, maybe it's the mafia.
Okay.
And if you want to blame something else, it's the the military industrial complex.
Yeah.
They were very powerful at the time and only more so now. But boy, there were a lot of outsiders that would have been real happy with this result too.
Yeah.
The Cubans, Soviets, any of the Soviet bloc countries.
Yeah.
It's just there are just so many. Like, people are like, who would do such a thing? And you're like, well, let me start a list. Right? There's a big list here. And who could have been? And there are just a gazillion questions that I have about this that the Warren Commission didn't answer. And then there was a subsequent commission, I've forgotten when it was, in the 80s, I think, that gave a little more information. And they answered a little more, but not a whole lot. And they basically, for the most part, supported the Warren Commission and tried to tamp down these conspiracies. But it just didn't do anything, I think, other than to make people think, oh, the government says it didn't happen, so we for sure know it did.
Yeah.
And I think, to your earlier point, isn't this the beginning of people not believing the government?
Yeah.
Well, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably. This is the beginning of wholesale lying by the government in a way the American people knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, the government lied and concealed things for a long time. The development of the atomic bomb, some of it's for national security purposes. And I can't help but to wonder if this is not what it was. If maybe they didn't have some evidence that it was Cuba, or they didn't have some evidence that it was the Soviets, or someone else, some other nuclear power. And the decision was taken to just simply not get in this.
Yeah.
To not get it. And it's funny because Johnson decided not to run. Johnson decided not to run. And
likely would have been elected had he.
probably would have been elected.
Yeah.
but it's
For,
said
love,
that
for
he-
love of Kennedy,
yeah,
people
it's-
would have elected him.
It's said that people didn't think much. He didn't think much of the military-industrial complex, and he was a little concerned about it. But so was Eisenhower. They were all concerned about the growing power of the military-industrial complex. And it's funny, a little-known fact about Johnson when he died. His protection agents basically didn't do much for 20, 30 minutes. Then they suddenly called for help. So he had probably had a heart attack at home, and they didn't do anything for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I guess to ensure that he was dead. I don't know. Maybe he knew too much, but he had decided, I think when it was time to run, not to run again. And I'm not sure he was a great lover of John F. Kennedy. I mean, he was his vice president, but that doesn't mean you like the person necessarily.
Yeah.
I think that Kennedy, because he was a Southern Democrat, I think he politically needed him. And so there's just a million things here that make no sense. So this is about 12:30 in the afternoon, and at about the same time, the police or somebody from the government tells, I think it's the Dallas Dispatch, they tell him to call Parkland, tell him to be on standby.
Yeah.
So whoever it was from the dispatch calls Parkland and just says, be on standby, there's a VIP headed there. And they didn't know who it was or what it was or anything else, so they did what they usually do. They start calling everyone to come downstairs to the emergency room and be on standby because they didn't know who it was
Right.
or what it was. And then President Kennedy and Governor Connolly got there.
Wow.
So they got there at like 12:34, so it was about 3.5 minutes, which is pretty remarkable. That would have been in a convertible with no one really wearing seatbelts. That would have been quite a ride.
It would have been a great ride.
It's freeways, it's not real curvy, and it's a pretty straight line generally, but
Yeah. Well, you touched on some things that I've never heard of before. And
I guess I'm not here to say what all the conspiracies are, even though I went over a list of the major ones.
Yeah.
There's probably 30 more.
oh, sure.
And I think the point is, though, so there are things that we've talked about that you didn't know, and we haven't even scratched the surface of this. But these are things that make you wonder.
Yeah.
These are things that make you wonder. And I didn't make up that bullet thing. I didn't find some picture of a bullet on the internet. I found the picture that the Warren Commission published, and I found the diagram that the Warren Commission made and published. And those things are just not believable. And anyone at those days who hunted or did anything with firearms or had military or police training or any kind of firearm training, you just know it doesn't ring true. It's not true.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. And then people start wondering, well, I wonder what did happen. And then people's minds start filling in all kinds of things. And when you have a list, a huge list of who could have done it, then all sorts of wild ideas come about, and happens to be probably some of them are more true than others. Sometimes, in investigations, when you can figure out the why, the who becomes apparent.
Yeah.
And in this case, you can't even figure out the why, because there would be so many whys. I mean, there's probably 20 whys, right?
Yeah.
Why did this happen? Well, because it would help this one, or it would help that one, or it would have helped the cause of this nation or that nation, or it's payback by the mafia, or Johnson wanted to be in shape, in the presidency, or the military-industrial complex was unhappy with him, clipping their wings and cutting back, or whatever. I mean, there's just a million whys, and when there's a million whys, it makes 2 million whos.
Yeah.
The grandfather of American conspiracy theories.
Oh yeah, we we hit the broad strokes tonight, which takes us on to what I get to talk about, my favorite conspiracy theory. So, I'm going to say outright, I don't think we landed on the moon. I think that it was a government production to prove that we were a greater country than the Soviets. That's all it was. So, some of my favorite things to bring up in this is find videos of people directly asking Neil Armstrong, did we really land on the moon? And he gets crazy. He gets irate. And like there's tons and tons of videos of him just getting completely upset and like grabbing people's cameras and smashing them because he refuses to entertain anybody that says we didn't land on the moon. Well,
I have to pee desperately.
okay. Go ahead. Do your
Okay.
Do you think we'll take another quick break and we'll be back? Yeah, get it going again. All right. Let me swap out this empty can. Put it in my stack of empty cans. Pull out one of these full cans. Put it inside
been
this
looking at-
penguin.
Have you been looking at how many viewers we've had?
We're at 1 right now.
I mean, have we had one pretty much the whole time?
There will be analytic information that comes through afterwards. So we have
Okay.
subscribe viewers, which is 1, which is probably my buddy. He's got his stuff set up to watch every time I go live because he's a good dude like that.
Okay.
But then we will have inorganic viewers, which are people that are not subscribed that watch.
Okay.
And sometimes the viewer count doesn't come up. We won't see that until the stream ends.
Okay.
So,
Curious.
just a few minutes after the stream ends, I can show you some analytic information. Good on you, Paul. I can see the fire is slowly awakening in you for the podcasting world. You've taken to this like a fish to water.
Ever so slowly.
It's okay. And I'm sure knowing that we're live and streaming doesn't really help. I know the first dozen times I streamed live, I was so nervous that I had to just get completely smashed to become a halfway functioning human because I was too nervous. I have horrible, horrible social anxiety.
That's interesting. I don't feel so nervous about this. I can talk to, 1 or 2 people or 7,000. I'm
Well, it shows
kind of good with that.
it shows on my other screen that we have 2 viewers. So
Oh, cool.
it's, the information is hit and miss. It's not perfect while you're live, but after the
Gotcha.
stream ends, we'll get a better view of what the numbers were. And the more consistent we are, the better things look for us in the long run. Anywho. Yeah, I had to get that puppy out of my lap. He was making me sleepy. He's never done that before. Not even when
That
we're
was very cute.
yeah, not even when we're sitting in bed. Like I'll sit in bed and I've got a little lap desk that I'll play, Call of Duty and stuff on. He'll sit on my legs on the other side of my computer. And he never just wants to be in my lap like that. So this makes me happy. Aren't you glad you have a giant dog now?
Paul just woke the beast. He gave him a chip. and now he won't.
Oh no.
Paul broke all the rules just now.
Shame.
Now he's here looking at
Right,
me.
all my puppy's behavior.
Yeah,
Look
I
at that.
accidentally dropped a French fry the other day when we got Wendy's, and now every time I eat
Mhm.
the puppies,
Yeah,
and then
Hoping something dropped.
how it works.
and he wants food so bad he's shaking. He's a good boy. He's much better when mom's not in the room. I'm the lawgiver, so I'm the one that has to be the bad guy when it's
Same.
time to be the bad guy. So when it's just me and
Same.
him, cool cat. He's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Like she's outside with him
That
now.
sounds
She'll be outside with him for 30 minutes trying to get him to use the bathroom. He goes outside with me, goes out, runs out, pees, poops, comes right back to the door. Let's go. We're done.
Yep.
Yeah. God forbid both of us are out there at the same time. Anyway, welcome back. That was P-Break number 2. We're going to get on to our third and final conspiracy theory of the evening. And my personal favorite. And I've been spouting this since, Aeon and I lived together, I think. I think we talked about it a little bit then. So, in a nutshell, from the top, we did not land on the moon. Not when we said we did it anyway. The largest prevailing theory is that there's no way they could have survived the solar radiation, which makes sense. We were dealing with archaic technology. There's more technology in this phone than there is on the shuttle that took those astronauts to the moon. Astronauts to the moon.
Yeah, there's more computing in a Timex watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than there was on the whole, the bit computing power on the shuttle itself.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not knocking the astronauts at all. Sure, maybe they went out into space a little bit, but they didn't land on the moon. So we'll start with the simple ones first. So think back to all of that footage that you've seen. This is one small step for mankind, one giant leap, all that stuff. And he jumps down, and the footage is crazy looking, right? Like trails.
Mm-hmm.
So let me state the obvious first. We don't have that footage anymore. The original footage from the moon landing does not exist anymore. It
Really?
mysteriously disappeared. No one knows where it went. No one knows what happened to it. There's not even an inkling. It was handed off to this guy and he said he was going to do this. Nope, nothing. Moon landing happened. Press release happened. Done. It disappeared for the history of the human race. The only reason we have footage today is because it was broadcast on local news networks. So,
Yeah.
which takes us to why the footage looks so crappy. The reason it looks so bad because what was broadcast to the American public, a camera set in front of a television screen. And that's what the American public saw. We did not see the raw footage. Not like NASA
I
did.
see.
That's why it looks so bad.
Okay.
We saw a video of the footage.
Yeah, we saw a video of a video. You know, take a picture of a picture.
Okay.
How good of a quality are you going to get?
Right, and bad cameras and cathode ray
Yeah.
black and white TVs.
Yeah. It's a compounding issue. And, you know,
that makes sense.
I had thought about showing some of the footage from what the American public saw, but I don't think we have anything, but I do have something. I have one video. You know, let's mute that. We're gonna kill this audio because it's a bunch of crap anyway. I think there is like a little hiccup of, yeah, look, this stuff here, you can tell now that you know it's footage of a TV screen.
Yeah, because that's what a Ray TV does.
Yeah,
when
that's
you try to film
the waves in it.
the flicker.
Yeah.
Flicker and the waving.
Look.
Actually tracing.
You see the reflection.
Tracing each image, yeah.
See the reflection of all the people behind the camera
Oh,
in
yeah.
that one.
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. This is what we got. This is what the American public was given. Nobody can say why it was done like that. But, you know, whatever. Okay, so there's something else that a lot of people like to say is, you know, you're not going to see stars. Well, the only reason we see stars is because at night we don't have the sun pointing at us. That's why we don't see stars. On the moon,
Right.
you see the sun, so you're not going to see the stars. That's why you don't see stars.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
For a while, I did subscribe to the school of thought about the American flag waving.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, I think that was just a misunderstanding of what really happened. If it's on the moon, the way the flag was set up, there was a pole and then a second arm that went parallel.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
they put it in the ground, it wiggled a little bit and it made it look like it was flapping in the wind. So people were like, oh, it's flowing in the wind. No, it's not. It was cross braces and jiggling from
And
being
it looks
stabbed
like
in the
it's on
ground.
the wire.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it looks like it's on the wire. When
it's-
you look at it, it looks like it's hanging.
it's not great. It
Because they knew it wouldn't open up. I mean,
right. Yeah, there's
whether you're faking it or not, there's no atmosphere, so it's not gonna
right.
move.
So, I'm going to touch on something that Aeon and I have talked about, the crosshairs.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I've seen those.
So, on the cameras, physically on the lens of the cameras are etched crosshairs. So, no matter what you take a picture of, the crosshairs are going to be there.
Right.
And they're used to, so I did a little tiny bit of research. Let me pull this up right quick. Not this. We've already seen that.
You said you had told me they were etched on there for ranging and size delineation because it's always going to be a certain distance away from the capture on
Yeah.
the camera. So no matter what, if you measure the line, you can know, if you know the distance of the object, you'll know exactly how big it was.
Yeah, I guess I didn't save this. I thought I saved it earlier. I guess I didn't. Let me check my browser right quick. Nope, I don't have it. All right, I did write down. So there was a definition of why they were there. It was scaling and reference for size. And it was also there to detect warping in the image. I don't know why we would need to detect warping in an image, but that was one of the reasons they did it. So, if you have something etched onto the lens, it's not on the lens, it's on the mirror of the camera. No matter what you take a picture of, you're always going to have crosshairs. So,
Yeah, and if you do it on the mirror, whether you zoom in or zoom out, the etching's not going to change.
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, no. Let me see if I could. Oh, no. Not Betty and Barney Hill. There we go.
I remember this. Yeah.
The crosshair
The
goes
etching-
behind a few
Yeah,
of the
that's not
elements.
right.
Yeah. So I mean, this is just one of many, many examples. So here's your crosshair, and it just
So that's a picture that they have printed that they've now put stuff in front of.
Yeah, that they've
Yeah.
superimposed things over.
there was some way of photo manipulation to show things were there, and I'm assuming that they just didn't think that people would look that closely at the photos.
Well, and then there's also some of the shadows. They claim some of the shadows point
Yeah.
in different directions.
Okay, yeah, I'm not 100% on board with the shadow theory, because it's hard to say exactly how light's going to function on a smaller surface like that, because we're used to how light reacts on Earth. It's going to do this, it's going to point that direction depending on which way the light source is coming from. We don't exactly know.
Well, it was the last photo you had up. I can show you where they're saying it is, and then why other people say it's not. So, if you look at the shadow here on the foreground,
this one here.
right? Yeah, and then if you look at the two longer shadows way in the back, those two.
Yeah,
But then look right there between.
Yeah, the angles don't match.
The two skinny ones are pointing the wrong direction, whereas all the rest have the same vanishing point.
Yeah.
There's two right there going the wrong way. Now, the people will point to that and say this is why it's not the moon landing, but other people claim those are shadows from struts above that are at an angle. I don't know. I can't see we can't see the rest of what's there, but that's one that I've heard people point to as well. Yeah, right there. So they're claiming it's some of the wires from above.
Yeah.
Making a weird reflection. Or
Look at this here.
know.
So vanishing point.
Yeah.
Look at this one.
Yeah.
So the leg on the left, the light source is directly behind, but the legs on
Right.
the right is way off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
But they do come together. So it's hard to say. It seems like it's a lower light source, not necessarily multiple light sources. You see what I'm saying?
I haven't looked at it much. But I know that I've heard people point to this as definitive.
Yeah.
This picture is definitive evidence. I like your crosshairs one more,
Yeah.
frankly, because they are in front of stuff until there's an object that's not the moon's surface,
Yeah.
and then they're behind. So
And-
I like it much more.
So let me get into my favorite part. And this is I usually start with those two just to kind of dip whoever I'm talking's toes into the water to see how they feel. This is what gets people to go, oh, crap. All right, you ready? So we've all seen this photo. First step on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So picture in your mind how soft that silt would need to be to leave that kind of impression.
Right.
So I'm thinking like talcum powder, baby powder, an inch thick, 2 inches thick. That's a huge deep impression. Look at the shadow on it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, bear with me. Gonna pause this. This is physically when the lander was coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Lander is coming down. You see the lines pushing out away from the giant rocket booster underneath. You see it going outward. Yeah, tons of. Look at all those lines. That's dust being blown away.
Right.
All right. Let's go back to this. This is the rocket booster that landed them on the moon. This thing is 6 foot wide. That's my arm span.
Right.
That's how wide this rocket booster is. This rocket booster is pointing straight down and landed them softly on the moon. It was covered with this soft silt, but yet that downward propulsion of that rocket did not blow away the dust to leave that footprint.
Gotcha. And there's no real ring or any
No.
mark
Well, look, where's
on
the
this.
where's the blast crater?
Right.
If the silt on the I say silt because that's the only word I could articulate in my brain. It's soft, powdery dust. If it is that fine to leave this deep of a footprint right off the bottom of the ladder of the lander, how is it that there is not a gigantic blast crater directly underneath this lander?
I see what you're saying.
And how is there enough dust directly beneath this lander after it landed
To still make a footprint.
to still make a footprint? And then look at all around it. Footprints here, all over here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the picture feels like sand. It looks like sand. Look at these. Look how deep these are. How in, what's the gravity in the moon? Third of ours? Or 2/3 of ours? Something like that. A third less, I think it is.
Pretty light.
Yeah.
It's pretty light. They're wearing over 200 pounds of gear
In their
Those-
loading.
in the
Yeah.
yeah. So that it's very light. Yeah.
So how is it that this...
You can't stand
Yeah.
up in the full extravehicular suit. They can't stand up in them on Earth. The tanks alone are too heavy to stand up and walk around in. So
This is the point that really changed my mind for me, because that strong of a blast crater, or that strong of a rocket pointed straight down at a surface covered in dust in low gravity, did not push all that dust away at all. We should have a blast crater 20, 30 feet wide. That's just not there. I mean, obviously it's pushing something away. They put enough thought into it to see this stuff blown away when it's landing in this video. Like, you could see it blowing directly away. It's leaving streaming marks.
yeah.
But once they land, we've got powdery surfaces, enough to make footprints on the moon.
Hmm.
Explain that, atheists. This is why I live. It's a shame because I love NASA. I really do. I've got stickers and I've got posters on the wall in my living room from NASA because I live 30 minutes away from a NASA launch pad. I love NASA. I love the fact that we're going to space. I love what we're doing. This is fake. This didn't happen.
I've heard people say that you can manipulate the film of them like doing their bouncing spacewalk and see guy wires. I've never seen it, but I've heard people say you can see the shine off of guy wires when they're doing their you can see vertical shine reflections from the wires that they're hanging from. I haven't seen it, but that's another thing I've heard referenced.
This footage here.
Yeah, that and others of them doing it.
I wonder if I have my video editing software on here still. I haven't opened it in a while. I wonder what happens if we speed it up. Because this is a thing I've seen people do. They take the footage, they speed it up, and they're like, see, all they did was slow the footage down, and now they're bouncing on the moon.
Gotcha. Because it looks like they're moving at
Right.
normal height and trajectory for a jump.
No, I don't want the update right now. Oh, where's my speed? Speed. Uniform speed. Ah, it wants me to log in. Jeez.
Oh well.
I could do it on my laptop. I guess I will manually do it. I can manually slide. Yeah, there you go. It just looks like somebody jumping.
Almost like skipping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see the wires though. But
No, these guys ran it through software, and they're like, see these spots. I was having trouble with that one. I like your blast crater evidence more.
but
I like the weird shadows almost as much.
but this also brings to light, why did they feel like they needed to put a camera on a TV screen? Well, back then we didn't have ways of manipulating directly hide the guide wires. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Also,
So let's put it.
to be fair, broadcasting technology was pretty crude then, even then.
Yeah. So how do we adjust this video without having to adjust the video? Well, let's put it on a TV screen and then put a camera in front of that TV screen. We're going to lose a lot of resolution that way.
True.
And now all of a sudden you don't see wires. Like the dust moving and everything. So if that was lower gravity and you kicked up dust like that, you would have gone end over end, right?
Also, I agree that I would think the dust wouldn't settle quite so quickly. I'll give you that.
Yeah, let's look at that at normal speed. Yeah, look how quickly it settles.
Pretty fast.
Yeah, it just looks like slow motion to me.
Because I even heard a theory that, because there's a shot where dude hits a golf ball on the moon,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember my physics teacher wasn't talking about whether or not moon landings were real or not, but he talked about if you had a pro golfer hit a drive on the moon, you could near put the golf ball into low orbit
Yeah.
with the force.
Yeah.
If you weren't, he was saying if you weren't restricted by a spacesuit and all that, and you really got
Right.
a serious whack at it, he was saying that the mass to volume ratio of the golf ball and its pull by gravity would be low enough that while it wouldn't go all the way around the moon, he's like, you could certainly send it an extraordinary difference because of the lower curvature of the moon
Yeah.
and the force with which you could apply it. He's like, the other problem is he's like, you don't really weigh as much, so it'd be hard to put the same force on it that you would on Earth, right? Because you also are a lower mass. But yeah, that was, and then I guess I've also heard people say, how did they recover this particular film where they leave?
Yeah.
Because we didn't, we landed in relative similar areas, but we didn't land at the same site each time.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, how did they recover the film
Absolutely.
from them launching back off?
Yeah, so they're
Did-
in
did
this
they
capsule. How
they
did
drive?
Yeah.
Because I can't remember. You can probably pull up all the landing sites for the moon landings, but I remember somebody saying so did they take a break in the broadcasting on the next time and go retrieve it? Did it stay broadcasting wirelessly from the moon? He's like, what battery source, what broadcasting antenna did they put up?
Yeah.
What all stuff.
And then not to mention the camera follows.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah. And then he's like, we're using remote robotics to control the camera for the shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answers to any of those because you didn't talk about any of that. But there was a whole show on Discovery about was the moon landing.
Yeah.
fake.
And then let's touch on the super conspiracy theory here. We had 11 minutes of silence after the landing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
because they were out of radio communication for 11 minutes. So now we're getting really deep here. They're talking like, yeah, this is when we made contact with the Greys.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm into. I mean, the truth is that capsule's tiny, and they didn't in the capsule. They did not keep their EV. Like the seats are not designed to have the EVA
Yeah.
pack on, and it's a tiny capsule. Like if you see the thing at like Johnson Air and Space Museum, when you see the capsules, like it's two jump seats, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's not like there's
Yeah, this is it right here. So that's
there's not. I mean, you see how he is.
yeah.
You're up in that top thing, and the bottom thing is just engine and
Yep.
fuel, and lander. So there's not like a bunch of room. I imagine, it would be, I as a person who's always thought that there was a moon landing, I'd be like, well, yeah, they had to put on that damn pack.
Well,
They
sure,
had
but
they had the jumpsuit part, like the outer part on, they kept on, but not the refrigerator they have on their backpack.
and my last little bit of food for thought is during the conversation between them on the moon and the people back in NASA, there was a 7-minute delay,
Right.
but they still managed to have a complete phone call conversation with the president while they were on the moon.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
And it was broadcast over live TV, and there was no delay.
That's right.
We can't even do that today.
Yeah, there's still always a delay.
Did we land on the moon or no? I'm just saying. Call me
I don't
crazy.
know, the space race was pretty intense, and it would have definitely changed America's confidence in America can do anything if the Soviets had landed before us,
Absolutely.
because they got Sputnik before us.
Yeah.
They got the satellite in stable orbit before us, and I think they even launched the first living creatures before us.
Yeah.
They launched Laika the dog before we ever put our chimps into space. So, we were losing. Until the moon landing, we were losing the space race. So, I mean, we did have motivation to make it seem like we got there first. I will say that. If you're going to say, like, who benefits, we benefited greatly in American confidence, government spending, all kinds of things in us landing there first.
Yeah.
Right. Made a lot of other projects and programs get funded because we believed we could do it, because it was, we felt like it was worth it, and we were able. So,
And in case you're wondering,
there was a lot there first.
the dog was launched into space, and we were told that he was never coming back. But we have video evidence of the contrary.
Wait, you mean oh my god.
Bear with me.
Like that dog the Russians shot into space. He made it. Your dog is in orbit.
He's wonderful. How do we get him back now?
Oh, about that, we do not.
Oh, my poor dog. He will die up there.
Joke on them. I find happy Dog Planet. In 50 years, we all go back to Earth and bite everybody. But now we dance.
Bad Russian
Good
joke
Lord.
there.
So that's what happened to the dog, in case anybody's wondering.
Well, you can rely on Family Guy for all the facts
Historical
of life.
facts.
Historical accuracy. in
Yes.
all things.
So, I'm painfully curious what you guys think about the moon landing now that I've laid out some factoids.
Well, I will say some of the stuff that you put forward is a head scratcher. I will say that. The delay is a head scratcher for sure. Because there is a delay. We still have a delay. That's part of why we, when we had rovers on the moon, we operated them so slowly.
Yeah.
Because you needed time to scope for rocks that it might get hung up on. Because once it's hung up, nobody is there to unhang it.
Yeah.
So they moved super slow, covered very, very small amount of ground. And they cited that being the reason. So that phone call's weird. I'll give you that. And these shadows in this one, I could go both ways. I could both say I don't understand the lander enough to be like, oh, where are those shadows coming from? And I could also say they're definitely not pointing in the same direction. And other people have said, well, there's a knoll there, and that's why it's weird. I don't know. The crosshairs are good though.
Yeah. I
like that. Why would the crosshairs be behind something? Because everything in the photo is outside the camera.
Yeah.
Even if they're on the lens, or even if they're in front of it, or superimposed later, why would they be behind objects?
Yeah.
I like that one probably the most. Why would the X's be behind white objects that the black X's should show up on? I do like that one a lot. That's my favorite one, I think. The rest I can bitter about. That one's pretty tough to explain away.
Some people say that it's because when you're looking at something with a high contrast, it kind of blurs out the etching. Well, I have cameras with etching. I have an extensive camera collection. Y'all know this. I have an extensive camera collection. I have a couple with reference lines etching. It doesn't matter what you're pointed at. You're going to always see that etching. That's why it's there.
Right. So, and there's I'm even seeing another one that I didn't notice. The one right by his foot. It stops when it gets near that. Oh, no, it doesn't. It's there. But it's thinner.
Yeah.
But those other two around the little antenna thing are, see, and it shows up there. So you're going to say it shows up on that white stuff, but doesn't show up on this other white stuff?
Yeah.
In the background in that first photo that you have pulled up right there, not that one, but the previous one. Go back one. Yeah. So the background on that first, the photo on the, I guess it's the left. The background's not that much different in color than the white.
Yeah. So
antenna.
Contrast difference be damned.
Yeah. Why doesn't it show up on there? That's pretty interesting.
Paul?
Well, there's really good intelligence reasons why they can fake this or put out false information. If we never landed on the moon, or at least we didn't do it here, it sure did make the Soviets spend a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And when they're spending money trying to race us into space, a race we're not even doing in real life, then they're not spending money on defense.
And that was the fall of the Soviet Union, was we outspent them. That was really what brought the end of the Cold War, is they ran out of money to continue doing their state as they were doing it. Capitalism outspent them, or if the moon landing's fake, outthought them. They took it too literal, and we got them to spend in ways that we were not. And same the footage, the nuclear footage that people say is like with that car appearing and disappearing, making it look like we're just making a ton of nuclear weapons and testing. Maybe we look like we were testing 2 or 3 times as many as we actually tested. Makes them burn up nuclear weapons, right? Testing
Right.
them.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad theory, Paul.
I was hoping to find this side-by-side picture. So
To
there's
me, that's the convincing reason. Right?
Yeah, to get them to spend money that we're not spending.
There was
while we spend in places we don't want them to.
There was a really good comparison photo that somebody had showed recently. I say recently, within the last 5 years. Pictures from Mars. And somebody found the exact same landscape and rock structures in Alaska on Google Maps.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And you could overlay the two, and they're exactly the same. Or they would say, here's a photo from this crater, and here's a photo from another crater 4,000 miles away. And parts of it are exactly the same.
Yeah, I saw that.
So,
Although I also follow somebody, I was following somebody that puts up all kinds of stuff about, fake Mars pictures. And they're like, oh, just look it up. It's on NASA's website. And this is months ago, but I was like, okay, tell me the photo number.
Yeah.
They're all numbered. Tell me the photo number so I can find it, because there's literally thousands of still photos.
Yeah.
Just tell me the photo number and I'll pull it up.
Because
I don't know which one it is. I'm like, you said you pull it off their website.
the photos that we see, it's not a single photo. So the way we get these super high resolution photos,
Right.
we'll take a picture here, get a high resolution, move a couple inches, take a picture here.
It's stitched. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're stitched together.
But
And-
what I mean is on their website, like the ones that they're pulling down from NASA, like the NASA website where you
Yeah.
can find all kinds of awesome photos of space, they'll have a catalog designation.
yeah.
The videos do too. And they're like, oh, well, I don't remember. I'm like, you're putting this forward as like the most important photo you could pull down and you don't remember.
Yeah. Come on.
By it. This looks like bad AI is what this looks like.
Yeah.
Or someone who doesn't know how to use Photoshop. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad. It was like Egyptian tomb side stuff in the mountainside of like supposedly a picture of Mars. I'm like, this is really bad AI work.
Yeah.
Is what this is.
Yeah.
Like, this is not Stargate. I'm more on board with you when you're like, look, here's a puddle of water that they claim they don't.
Yeah.
Give me something else. But give me a full-on carved Egyptian tomb in the bedrock side of a cliff face that the rover's near. Come on.
Yeah.
And NASA just has it on their website and doesn't say anything about it. I don't believe you.
So, I think we should go around and say what we think about each other's conspiracy theories. What do you say about that?
Yeah. Sounds good. Who starts?
Why don't you start, Aeon, since you were first?
So, the JFK thing's always blown my mind.
Yeah.
Ever since the first time I watched anything on like the History Channel about it, right? Always blown my mind. Not the stuff about, they're always hung up about who was Oswald working for and all that. I was always like, no, that's the wrong question.
Yeah.
That's the wrong question. Even as a kid, because of the bullet trajectory, because they always, cite the commission's findings. I'm like, that is the wrong question. But this is the first time I saw the bullet was supposed to be whole.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. They just always talked about the bullet trajectory. And I've seen stuff about people trying to recreate, the bullet path and all this. I'm like, well, recreating bullet path's hard. I was like, but that's not a possible way for a bullet to travel and hit that many hard things and continue on with enough velocity to continue to pierce the next hard thing they claimed.
Mm-hmm.
That always bothered me. And some of the stuff about the grassy knoll, but the Zapruder film always bugged me the most. The Zapruder film always bugged me the most. Because it seemed obvious to me that it was more than one bullet. And I think your covering of it and distilling of the big punch points, because there's a bunch of micro stuff too that's super weird too. But those are the big punch points, and I think it's just staggering. And I think you distilled it down to even if you already think you have an opinion about the Kennedy assassination, I think you certainly, even if you're like, oh no, it was Oswald, it was whatever,
Right.
I think you punched the biggest holes in it.
The trouble is we can't even get to the who's and the whys, because either there's been a conspiracy to hide information, or the government's been so shockingly incompetent or shockingly dishonest with us. I think the average person not in the know, and I don't know who would be in the know at this point. We just don't have enough information to know. In fact, as I was thinking about this week, American juries are hard things to predict, I'll tell you as a lawyer. But I'm not sure there'd be enough information to convict Oswald.
No, absolutely not.
I I don't know that if I were on a jury, I don't know if I could vote to convict, given every single thing I've seen, because you don't have anyone seeing him shooting. No one.
Yeah.
So I think yours is valid, and I've always thought that. I'm only more convinced now today.
Right.
Yes, I concur with your statements. I think that
I'm only more convinced today.
there's so much evidence to say that Oswald probably wasn't the shooter, or if he was, he did not act alone.
He was one of yeah, right.
That it's staggering, and the trajectory, the bullet did it for me. I did not even know that.
Yeah,
I've heard the term magic bullet. I just assumed it was like
that's what they mean.
I just assumed it was like a weird trajectory. I didn't know that it did this.
Yeah,
before
possible trajectory.
Turned somersault.
Yeah,
did all kinds of stuff.
I did 3 flips, jumped out, and posed for a selfie before it landed in the governor's thigh.
Right, and I can't say whether I think, what I think the reasons were that it was covered up. I think it's just as likely that the Secret Service bungled the crap out of it, and the U.S. government did not see this coming, and they were so scared that they were going to have to tell the American people, we didn't see this coming, we have no idea who did it. They didn't want to appear to be out of control of the situation, which I think they were.
They took the first guy they took the first guy that looked guilty and said, "Here we go, we've got him. Hold him up for the cameras."
Right. Because they didn't want a huge unknown and a huge, the U.S. can't even protect its own president, didn't even know this was coming kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't want the American people to be even more scared. I think that's likely. I don't think the whole government was in on it.
Right. And then someone who's a cozy friend with the Dallas police shows up for the police to do their famed perp walk. Such BS with this perp walk stuff. They do the famed perp walk, and then the cozy dude, the dude who has a cozy relationship with the Dallas police, shoots and kills him.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
And
the only person with
injury
answers gets killed.
Yeah, the only person with answers, the only person saying I didn't do it, I'm a patsy, this is a setup. He's killed by whatever his name is, Ruby.
Yeah. Jack Ruby.
Yeah.
And then as to the moon landing, you showed me some stuff I hadn't looked at before. Some of the stuff I had heard before, and I've seen people pick it apart, and I still don't know where I land, because I think on the one hand, I do think we went there, but I guess I'd have to say I don't know if I'm sold that every time we said we went there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think we did. Whether or not the first time we went there we actually did, I don't know. I understand the physics behind how they intended to get the craft there, and how they did the mathematics, and how they adjusted for not having computing power in the capsule. I get in theory how it all worked. It all makes sense. It is possible, but it would have been a big gamble.
Yeah.
It would have been difficult, and it would have been a big gamble. And not maybe as bad as a coin flip, but not great.
Yeah.
So whether or not they did it the first time and actually went there the first time, now I guess I don't know. Because they did stack up. It's pretty staggering odd. It is pretty staggering odd. I do believe that we did go there, at least in later missions. But I'm also very willing to believe that the U.S. wanted, like Paul said, to get the Russians to spend money on some shit that, for us, was not dangerous.
Yeah.
Whereas them looking into hydrogen bombs and making the super was very dangerous for us.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to put stuff into other places. So we figured if they're working on rockets anyway, why don't we get them to spend rockets somewhere else?
Yeah.
And so I like that, and I think it's very probable. So that's what I think. That's my take on year 2.
Well, cool. I'm glad I could bring you over to the side of people knowing the truth. Know the truth, my friend. I'm gonna say, so a lot of the stuff that we talked about, so we missed a little bit at the beginning about nuclear arsenals. I did not know that we had that many decommissioned nuclear armaments. And my brain tells me it's just sitting in one warehouse all together in a row. Here's the row of shells, the row of computer boards. Here's the row of control modules. You just go down and pick one of each. We've got one slapped together. I feel like that's how it is.
I imagine, at least for the component side, it's almost exactly that. Probably by generation of weapon.
Yeah.
Right? I imagine it's almost exactly like that, given how many. I imagine it's almost just like that. Kind of like a ready assembly line.
Yeah.
Like the storage for a ready assembly line. Now the cores, you got to do a little more than that. You can't have that many cores that close to each other. That's really really dangerous.
Yeah.
Physically. Like having all the control rods out of a nuclear reactor. It's like it's that times a lot. You need special storage for that. And they're probably not all stored in one place for strategic reasons. But I imagine vehicle-wise, it's probably just like that.
Yeah, I feel like if they needed to put together a couple hundred nuclear missiles, they could probably do so in a few hours.
Yeah, I bet all the Titans,
all
the Titans are all stacked up. Yeah, all the Titan missiles, all the Triton, all the sub ones, same thing. All the droppable dead bombs, right? Same thing. Housings, control modules, the blast sphere that actually does the compression to start it, and then they've got cores, probably on site but not in the same building. But like all the dead bombs, you've got all the dead bomb components and their cores in a location. All the Titans, you've got them all in a location with the core stored slightly, adjacent. Yeah, I don't doubt it, because strategically, why not?
Yeah,
if you're going to disassemble it and not destroy it, why would you not keep them together?
I would almost be willing to wager that the cores are sitting on a truck underground, like they said, but on a truck in front of a door. So if need be, pop this door up and take off in the truck. You're good to go. And they start that truck once a week just to make sure it still runs.
Yeah.
So they can.
You want that.
30 minutes later, we have a bomb assembled.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine it's not unlike that. That's a scary thought, right? 12,000.
Yeah. And like you said, I'm sure half of them were probably recycled and repurposed into the ones we're using today.
Yeah. And we used to use bigger cores with less efficient detonation, so you needed a bigger core to get, less of an explosion than you get now out of a smaller core, right? The more efficient you can get your explosion, the more of the material actually generates fission, and the bigger the explosion. So we got way, way more efficient at it, and we use a smaller core now. So like one core might make two modern cores,
Right.
So I don't know, because they're never going to tell you anything. No, they're not going to disclose what they're doing with them because they don't have to.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. That's the thing that nobody's talking about.
And then the Kennedy stuff. So there was probably half of the information he told us tonight I've never heard before. And I mean, y'all saw my reaction to the spray. I had never seen that part of the footage before. Absolutely, more than one shot was fired. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind at this point.
It's staggering.
And now I know why the Zapruder film was so heavily edited for public consumption, because they would immediately, it didn't take us but, 2 hours to figure out that multiple shots were fired.
Well, and the first time you saw that spray, you're like, oh, God.
Can
you imagine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right after that? He was a very popular president.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the American public seeing that on TV? No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
No way.
There would have been more questions than they could have answered, and everybody's stories would have just fallen apart.
Yeah.
Something that's the common denominator in all of the conspiracies we've talked about today is the American government.
Yeah.
And what I think we know... What?
And power shifting.
What I think we know is if the American government's involved, there's going to be dishonesty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's self-serving.
Or truth by degrees.
Yeah, truth by degrees or that sort of thing. So I think there's nuclear weapons. I think that I think that those things exist. I do think, though, that there's a lot of intelligence projects, intelligence things run against them, or run about them. Gus, go
lay
down.
down.
There's a bunch of, there's a bunch of stories that are, serve the state's purposes.
Right.
So again, the government's being self-serving because we want our enemies to appear to be bigger than it is, or more than it is, or we've spent more money on it, or whatever suits us at the moment. Or yes, we're complying with all these treaties and pacts we've entered, and we've disassembled all this stuff, or whatever. We'll never know the answer to that. But the thing about the moon landing, it's funny me hearing you say, I don't think we landed on the moon. Boy, you'd be after my grandpa's heart, right? He always said that it was all make-believe and all fake and all this stuff. And I never considered that it was make-believe and fake until today. But then to me, some of those things are like, yeah, I wondered about that. But the real convincing thing to me is it feels like an intelligence operation.
Yeah.
To get the Soviets to try to spend a bunch of money, spend a bunch of resources.
Bankrupt the
So-
Soviets, so we're not the
Yeah.
ones fighting for superiority in the space race.
Right. And it worked. And it worked.
Absolutely.
And if we didn't actually land on the moon, boy, it feels to me like there's an awful lot of evidence that we did. If this was an intelligence operation, boy, it's gone on for a long time. And I suppose that's possible. But I don't know. But what I do know is if you have the American government, there's probably non-disclosure, there's dishonesty, there's secrecy, there's self-serving, serving the government, over-regulation of people and trying to tell us what it is we want to believe or should believe or need to believe or whatever. And that comes awfully close with something that this professor of religion, Pasulka, Dr. Pasulka over at, I've forgotten where she is, University of North Carolina or something. She talks about UFOs technology, and basically she talks about and this whole appearances of aliens and all this sort of thing, but talks about it as a new religion, the birth of a new religion.
Yeah.
She's not advocating whether it's real or not, but she's talking about it as a religion. And the moon landing stuff comes really close to that, right? Because you even have the overlapping, those 11 minutes are when we saw the grays and just this whole thing. And so you're starting to deal with people that, is almost a matter of religious faith. That certainly happened. And that's when we had contact with these aliens. And then you have others that are like, listen, this just didn't happen. These are faked pictures. I think we can have faked pictures, and I think some of those indeed probably are faked pictures. And I think they were probably faked for an intelligence reason, but I think maybe we landed on the moon. But it's interesting today, I've never before thought that we might not have landed on the moon.
Yeah.
My grandpa used to say it, and I used to think, oh, he's just crazy.
When it comes to telling a lie to a great number of people, the one that is the least believable is the one with a perfect alibi.
Right.
And when it comes to the U.S. government and landing on the moon, they have a perfect alibi. They've got the science to back it up. They've got pictures. They got video. They've got a phone call with the president.
Right. The more you say it, the truer it becomes.
Yeah.
And they've said it in all these ways. They've sent this message in this phone call, the impossible phone call, in these photos, in video of the footprints, and testimony of the witnesses that were actually there, the astronauts. And it's just if you were starting a religion, that is exactly how you'd go about it. You'd have a bunch of evidences, you'd have some witnesses, and you'd trot them around to speak publicly, and you'd broadcast what they were doing, and that's exactly what happened. Until I think the news media, until the network television got sick of it, and there was a point they weren't even broadcasting it.
Yeah. Like, how do we drive home that what we're doing is legitimate. Oh, let's have a phone call with the president.
Right.
And you know,
right.
back then, you know, the president was considered the holiest of holies. You know, they held
Right.
all the information. They were the most trustworthy person in the United States. It just seems like a perfect alibi, you know, and it's awfully convenient
Right.
that the only holes that we were able to poke were 50 years later, once, you know, video and photographs become declassified and we're able to really look at some of this stuff, you know, that we decide.
So, you know, for me with the nuclear thing, of course, there's dishonesty there because the government's involved and dishonesty suits the government purpose. And the same thing with the moon landing. Of course, there's dishonesty and it suits the government purpose. I was trying to think of other conspiracies that didn't involve the American government, or at least not outwardly, and that they didn't have such a hand in. And the only thing I can think of, really, other than some of the UFO stuff around the world, the only thing I can think of is in recent history, like while I've been alive, is the death of John Paul I. There's a huge thing of what happened to him. I mean, he was the Pope for 33 days.
Yeah.
And then woke up dead.
Woke up dead.
Woke up dead.
He woke up and he was like, "Hey, I'm dead."
Yep. And there's a lot of stuff about, you know, a lot of different ideas about that, a lot of conspiracies about why and why not, and just a bunch of stuff. There are a bunch of things that make no sense to me, and part of the problem is Vatican secrecy, much like U.S. government secrecy, released information that didn't work, wasn't true. You know, the papal undertakers are usually about 30 or 45 minutes away. They were there in 5 minutes. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, crazy things. But so that's the thing. But in all these conspiracies, it's the government, and the real government purpose is to obfuscate and hide and be dishonest.
Yeah,
for a government.
It comes down to the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rule.
Right.
You know,
or the picture, as the case may be.
Yeah, the people writing. Say that again.
Thank goodness for Mr. Zapruder in that film and him refusing to give it over. Oh no, I'll carry it. You can drive me there.
Yeah, yeah. You know it. What's the saying? It's whoever writes the books writes the history, or something like that.
Right. Oh, whoever wins the war writes the histories. Yeah.
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 So it's just.
And you know, the funny thing is now is we get to write the history about the moon landing, because we were in a race at that point with the Soviets.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder what the Soviets say about making it to the moon first.
Right.
Well, sure, and we won, so of course, you know, so then it's hard for them to be like, no, it's fake, right? Because of course the people who lost and wanted to get there before us would say it's fake.
Right.
It's like, it's perfect. Yeah, it's just perfect. And,
it's a perfect alibi, and that's the person that's lying.
The only other scientists in the world qualified to say whether we did or didn't are the exact people in the same race with us, so of course they'd say we didn't.
Yeah.
And you know, another example of us with the Soviets would be what we call the World War II and what they call the Great Patriotic War. They have a very different view of who and why the war was won. And what happened.
Yeah.
A very different view.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were sort of Johnny come lately in the war, and I don't know what our death toll was. It was under 500,000. And theirs was in the millions.
Yeah.
Millions.
Yeah.
And that's what Russians do anyway. It appears over the centuries. They just throw people at wars.
Yeah.
They just throw and throw and throw and throw people at wars. But they have a very different view about that. And so it might be interesting, you know, if the Soviet machine was still intact and you could ask it questions and get honest answers. And I don't have any imagination they'd be any more honest than our government.
Right.
But it'd be interesting to know what their view about it might be.
Mm-hmm. See what other countries' textbooks say about major historical events. Yeah, I've often considered the same things, because there's a whole other side of the story that we've never heard.
Right.
So, with that, Aeon, do you have any closing thoughts, my friend?
So there is an SCP
Oh.
on the SCP Foundation called the Demon Orb.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's one of the few SCP files that's under the section Solved. The Demon Orb was supposed to be an orb that killed those that came near it or handled it, and it was formerly in government possession. SCP Foundation went out to take possession of and deal with this anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
The anomaly was found to be the third core made when the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were made. And this is actually, somebody really did die handling it, but he was doing something stupid in testing. He was dropping it through a set of graphite bricks to basically make it go critical for like a moment as it free fell through the bricks. It got stuck. And when it got stuck, the brick that he had removed for viewing, it generated so much radiation in that supercritical moment that he died within days. But it was never an SCP. It was a nuclear core, and I think it got that reputation because they tried to cover up that they'd been testing things so ridiculously recklessly that there was no mechanism for dropping. He was literally taking it and boop, and then catching it.
Oh,
nuclear core.
Yeah,
nuclear weapons core. So I think that gives you, and that's how the SCP Foundation, whether those are real or fictionalized stories, it really was, that there was a third core was a secret for a very long time, because one scientist died within days and another scientist developed cancer within a year or two and died, his assistant, because it was they tried to cover up what they'd been doing to try to win that race.
Yeah.
So it's a great example of yet another conspiracy to cover up mistakes and information by the U.S. government. And for all your local neighborhood U.S. government conspiracies, all you need do is follow us.
Beyond the Shadows.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs. Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him. Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.